Hello, everybody, and welcome to our latest Residential Tenancies Act update. Today, I'm joined by Kayani from our property management team, and today we'll be talking about applications and goods left behind. So, in this particular area, there's been some pretty significant changes as well, as there has been over the other 5 sessions that we've covered off so far. So Kayani will take us through, I suppose, the changes that have been made to rental applications that are made by prospective tenants, and also what to do with goods that are left behind in investment properties. So previously, it was a fairly straightforward process that was handled by property managers, but now there's a few more rules and regulations, and I suppose different things that we need to go through and a process that we need to go through with goods that are left behind. So. With that, I'll hand over to Kayani because he knows a lot more about the detail than what I do, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Michael. So let's start with goods left behind. Up until 28th of March 2021, we were supposed to contact, as rental providers, CAV, Consumer Affairs Victoria, to come assess whatever the goods were left behind by the rentals. But now, since 29th of March this year, we are supposed to get all done ourselves. So let's categorize what things are left behind by the tenants, and then we go accordingly. First of all, personal documents. So the personal documents includes official documents, photographs, correspondence. It could be emails or mails, images, still, or hard drives and flash memories. We need to be very careful with personal documents. What we are supposed to do is we have to keep the personal documents somewhere safe for next 90 days. Straight away, the moment we enter the properties, if anything is left behind, I would definitely recommend everyone to take photos of each and every item left behind in the property. Send out the goods left behind form with all the item in the form to the rentals, and let them know that these things were left behind, what or how would they like us to proceed with it. Once that's done, we're supposed to keep that for next 90 days. After 90 days, we can dispose it off. We can also charge the rentals for those 90 days if we are putting those things in a safe place. Number one. Number two, goods left behind which can be disposed of straight away. It could be dangerous goods like knives, daggers. Sometimes I've actually personally seen those things left behind in the properties. Or let's suppose things which have no monetary value, like old towels, clothes, which we can straight away dispose of. Also, perishable goods, most of the time you can find them inside fridges. So if you guys see anything left behind and which have no monetary value, we can just straight away throw it off without even advising the rentals.
So that's a big, I suppose, big change to what we've seen previously. And I know there's some more areas to go through as well. But personal documents don't just mean physical pieces of paper, or I know we've had in the past photo albums and things like that people have got. It could go to as small as a tiny little USB with something on it, where there's now a requirement to hold on to that information for 3 months or 90 days.
For 3 months, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have to, like, as I mentioned, if someone has left behind anything in my property, I'll definitely take photos, put it in that form, and send it over to the rental. Yeah, and see how we go.
So just, I suppose it kind of comes back to the fact that as we are already, just making sure that we're thorough on our outgoing inspections and making sure that we're taking photos of the condition of the property as it's been presented to us at the very end. We don't want to, I suppose, fall in a situation where the tenant's potentially, saying that we've thrown things out that, so the renters potentially said something that we've thrown something out that wasn't there. So certainly conducting an outgoing condition report on the property in the condition that it's in, and then arranging for the cleanup to occur.
Yeah, that is why actually I'm emphasizing more on taking photos, Michael, because tomorrow, let's suppose someone try and claim their things after 2 months, you actually have exact data and exact photos, like what was actually left behind inside the property. No blame can come on you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's great.
And all those good things, all the goods which are left behind, let's suppose, which we cannot dispose of, like you cannot dispose of trophies, you cannot dispose of urns with human remains in there. You cannot dispose of furniture. Definitely, you have to keep it there, and medals and trophies. So basically, what you do is all this, uh, all this stuff which is left behind, which we cannot dispose of, we have to keep it at a safe place for next 14 days. After 14 days, we can actually sell it off, and we only have to do a couple of things with there. So once we have sold off the stuff, whatever the cost we have incurred or the company has incurred, we'll just keep that cost with us. The remaining money will go straight to RTB account, and the tenant can actually get hold of the money from there.
Yeah,
that's how it actually works. So moving forward, like as I said before, it was a lot easy. We just have to call people from consumer affairs. They used to come assess everything, but now all the responsibility lies on the rental providers, which is us as an agent.
So just more so to kind of, I suppose, summarize that now. So there's different stages and different types of I suppose different buckets that goods left behind need to be put into.
Yeah.
Previously, and it's probably useful to actually highlight what the previous process was. So whenever we'd go into a property and there's actually goods left behind in that property, the process for us was to contact Consumer Affairs. If the tenant wasn't contactable themselves, typically you try and contact a tenant and arrange for them to collect it. But you typically contact Consumer Affairs. Consumer Affairs would send one of their representatives out and actually inspect the items, and they'd sign an order to us saying, yes, you can dispose of these items, or no, you must hold on to these items for X amount of time and arrange for storage. In the majority of cases, things that are typically being left behind are generally worthless anyway.
Exactly.
So they'll typically sign the order and say to get rid of them. But now the onus is on ourselves as the property managers to make that determination of whether something is worth something or not. So you've got these ones that can be disposed of immediately, which hold no monetary value, whether they fall into the prescribed goods, which, as you mentioned, urns containing human remains or labelled containers, medical devices, equipment, prostheses, medication, and medals and trophies.
Yeah.
So there's a list of prescribed items which we need to hold for 2 weeks or 14 days, before they can then be disposed of and sold off.
Yeah.
So obviously, a pretty considerable difference compared to what we've seen previously, and you can see how I suppose it can kind of then hold up the occupation of the property by another tenant. Because a lot of these things, whether they're being stored there on site or whether they're being boxed up and stored off site, it could potentially lead to a bit of a delay. And the other thing too, Kayani, I don't know, we obviously haven't had any of these situations yet, but rifling through all of these pieces of goods that have been left behind, obviously you need to look through them with quite a lot of rigor to make sure that there's you're not missing anything, and accidentally, like I said earlier about the USB, accidentally throwing out a USB with some personal items on it, and being unaware of that.
Exactly. Like before, as I mentioned, we were not really responsible for a lot of things, Michael. Like CA, they just used to come, assess, and give us the orders. Now, more responsibility and there's more work for us. Basically, you have to go through each and everything, whatever is left behind. You can, as I mentioned, if you think there's no monetary value, you can just chuck it in the bin, throw it away. But for all the things which we need to keep, yes, we have to go through by law.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can be in trouble.
Yeah. So so we just need to make sure that we are covering off on those. So I suppose combined with the thorough outgoing inspection, which needs to be done, we do have a checklist that we'll be able to take out to us, to take with us to properties to make sure that they're meeting all of those requirements, and that combined with the outgoing condition report photos should provide us with enough comfort that we've done the right thing and followed the right steps here as well. Yeah.
So we have to be very, very thorough every time we go out to conduct an outgoing inspection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then you touched on selling of goods and charging of rent for storing of the goods that are there. So how does that work exactly? So say the personal documents, for example, if we're holding those for 3 months, can we charge rent to the tenant for having to store those items? Say it was more than a USB, which can be put in a drawer for 3 months and then disposed of.
Michael, if there are certain items which we can easily store in our office, yes, we can. We can just give a little bit of favor to the rentals.
Yeah.
But If it's large items, let's suppose a fridge, a washing machine, TV, couch left behind, we cannot store it, and we need to have storage, proper storage for it. So definitely we will be charging. So once comes 14 days, we can sell off those items. Whatever the money we receive, we'll just charge the occupation charges.
Right.
That's it, and remaining money will go straight into RTB account.
Right. Okay.
And the tenant can claim that within 90 days.
In 90 days. Okay. All right. So if we, I suppose, if we go through that in a, like say, a worked example, if you've got a tenant that's vacated the property, left a bunch of goods behind, we've had to store those goods off-site in an off-site storage, and it's cost $200 for the period of time that those goods need to be stored. Then after that period of time's expired, we've then I don't know, Gumtree or a Facebook Marketplace, whatever it might be, some sort of online way of getting rid of these things. They've been disposed of, and we've received $500 for the sale of those goods. Yes. Then the $200 would go towards settling the $200 that was outstanding.
For the storage cost?
The storage, and the $300 will get sent to the RTA.
Goes to RTB, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And the renter can actually claim $300 from RTB.
From RTB.
Not the full amount.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Great. Fantastic. And I suppose probably a good opportunity just to remind the audience as well that Q&A is open, as it usually is. So if you do have any questions that come through, please send them through. We'll get them here as well, and we can ask them. I know I'm quizzing Kayani on quite a lot of these because, like I said, it's a pretty significant change on what we've had previously. But yeah, if there's any questions that I haven't asked, please feel free to ask them through the Q&A. Right, Kayani, is there anything more there on the goods left behind?
Not really, Michael. As I mentioned, you just have to be very, very careful with what items you're disposing of, with what items you need to keep with them. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, all the responsibility lies on you as a rental provider. Yeah. Because tomorrow if something goes missing, or if the tenant comes within 90 days to claim something, you have to reproduce it for them. Yeah, rental providers. So we can be in trouble. Yes. Yeah. So we just have to make a list of all the items, take photos, send it straight away to the renters, and let them know, okay, this is what you have left behind. What would you like us to do? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. One question I did have, and it's probably a really specific one, but and you occasionally see it, and I've seen it a little bit more recently. Driving into multi-level car parks and things, you see cars that have been left. It appears as though they're abandoned. They're covered in dust and things like that. Going to the airport, you see cars that are sitting there now for months and months on end. What happens in that situation? So what happens with the car if it's been left? Because typically the car park is on title for the property, so then becomes part of the rental agreement. What happens to a car that's been left in a car park? Michael, some years ago, I remember there used to be rego stickers on top of our front screens. Yep. So it used to be a lot easy to know if the car is still registered or unregistered. Nowadays, what you need to do is you need to go check with Vicroads if the car is still registered and who is under whose name is it. Number one. Number two, you have to contact the personal property securities register and check for the ownership of the car. Contact those people. If the car is registered and is in a drivable condition, nobody is claiming it, you can actually sell it off. Right. Okay. And if it's unregistered and you can't drive it, you can just call the wrecker and dispose of the car. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. So yeah. So I suppose the distinction there is the main distinction there is whether the car is registered or not. So if it's unregistered and you can't drive it, it's in no condition, you can just contact the wrecker and dispose of the car. Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, very good to know. Because like I said, driving through some of these city apartments and the car parks in there, you do see them, cars that are covered in an inch of dust. So there's no surprises there. All right, great. Well, again, if there's any questions that come through, please feel free to send them through. We might move on to the second part of today's session, which was around the application forms, and specifically the types of questions that we're allowed to ask in those application forms to prevent indiscrimination that might occur through the application and approval process. I know there was quite a lot of angst amongst property managers and the industry in general when it was announced that there was going to be some things removed. I believe they've seen reason on a few of those parts. So there was parts there where they did mention that
or initially they were saying that you couldn't even ask for photo ID and things like that, but I think they've seen reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Kayani, I'll get you to walk through those, and I'll probably jump in with a few questions as we're going through, if that's okay.
So before the introduction of these reforms, Michael, normally when we used to receive the application, the first question we used to ask is if the renter is paying on time, if there was any dispute, if the renter ever took the landlord or you or the company to VCAT for any dispute, if the bond was ever deducted out of when they were about to vacate the property for any reasons. But now, after the introduction of these reforms, basically we cannot ask another agency when we're contacting them for a rental reference that if the tenant or the renter ever took them for a dispute to VCAT, we cannot ask that question. We cannot ask another agent that if the bond was ever deducted for any reasons, or we cannot ask for a renter to provide us with their personal banking details, like the bank statements or the credit card statements. These are basically all illegal questions to ask. So basically what I could recommend is if anyone is applying for a property, you can actually go for their maybe employment contracts. You can check you can still ask for the rental ledgers, which can actually basically tells you if they were paying on time or not. You can ask for the pay slips. Yes, you can still ask that. But as far as the banking statements are concerned, you cannot ask them anymore.
Yeah, which does have a pretty significant impact, because I know that was one thing that we always used to ask for. And the bank statements were, I suppose, useful. I think we can still request a bank balance, but not necessarily a bank statement. The bank statements are useful, obviously, to show whether, I suppose, the person themselves, one, had a history of paying rent. So you could actually typically see rental payments going out. You could also verify income payments as well. So an employment contract is great, and pay slips are fantastic, but they're documents that can potentially be created.
Forged, yes.
Yeah. So being able to kind of reconcile that, pay slips to a bank statement was really useful. But in the same, I suppose, in the same voice, we have seen situations where even recently tenants are still providing bank statements.
They're still going, because most of the people, like, they think that more is better. So they keep on providing us those documents, and there's no harm in not telling them that they can't. Yeah,
exactly. And it's not necessarily that they can't. It's more, I suppose, the fact that they don't need to,
exactly.
And we can't necessarily request it from them. But if they're comfortable to provide it, then Absolutely. We do that. Yeah, so it's one of those ones where we can understand, I suppose, the reasons behind it and wanting to keep people's, bank statements private, and we do understand that. But for those tenants that are willing to provide it, it does certainly help. And there's not been any, I haven't really seen any instances of it being difficult to obtain those documents.
So far, so good. They're still providing us with all those documents. And even if you ask, like, obviously, we're not asking all these questions to either the other agencies or the renters, but if they're happy to provide, more than welcome.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And you mentioned the VCAT and bond and everything like that. Obviously, that's something that can't necessarily be asked, but there are other questions that can be asked, which typically give you an indication of what it's like, or what the tenant's been like with their previous rental provider.
Exactly. As I mentioned, we can ask them for the ledgers.
That's right.
The printed ledgers, you can actually, because what we do is we normally ask them when the previous tenancy started and when it ended. So let's suppose if a tenancy started on 6th of May, so if you go through the ledger and if you see, okay, they were paying either on the 6th or before 6th, it means it's a good renter. He's always paying on time. There are no issues.
Yeah, exactly. So that's good. So yeah, some limitations there, but nothing that we can't necessarily work our way around.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And then what about some, just I suppose, the private information? So things like ID. I know there was some questions around, the types of ID that people could provide.
So you basically cannot ask for age, gender, where they come from, all these things. It all basically comes under discrimination.
Yeah.
If they are students, yes, we have to still provide them with the property where they can live.
Yes.
You cannot discriminate if someone is a professional to a student, basically.
Yes. Okay. And I suppose the question there comes around typically passports. And and particularly if it's an overseas passport, whether they've actually got a valid visa, can we still ask for, the situation where, say, it's an international student? We're not having a whole lot of those coming in at the moment, but say you've got an international student who has a visa, a passport which was issued in China, and then we've got we're not sure what their residency status is. Typically, when they're overseas students, you'll be able to ask for a certificate of entitlement, which shows the period of time that's left on their visa. Can we still ask that?
We can definitely. As we've already explained before, people are still providing us with all these documents.
Yeah.
As far as the passports are concerned, yes, we are not supposed to ask them, but yes, we can ask them for how long they have stayed. Let's suppose if their visa is expiring in 4 months' time and they're going for a 12 months lease, then we're asking for trouble.
Yeah.
We can give them a 6 months. We can offer them a 6 months, not 12 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, we can ask for that statement where it actually says how long they can stay in Australia for.
Yeah. So
just to cover our backsides, and also we have to look after the landlords too.
Of course. Yeah, exactly. So it's about collecting the information that we need to be able to make a decision on whether to approve the tenant or not, and not necessarily discriminating against the tenant in the process.
Exactly.
So that would not be seen as a discrimination against someone who only had 4 months left on a visa. We'd be talking to them more about the fact that we can't, I suppose, commence a 12 months tenancy with you if you've only got 4 months left legally within the country. Yes, there's some visas that might get renewed and things like that, but on the face of it, with the information that we're presented, we can't go ahead and approve a 12-month tenancy.
And also, Michael, we also have to let them know that down the line they can also be in trouble financially.
Yeah.
Let's suppose if they're going for a 12-month lease and they have to break the lease after 6 months, they are still entitled to pay for next 6 months.
Yeah.
So we just have to make sure that we also have to communicate with them that this is the best option for you to go with.
Yeah.
Let's suppose after 5 months, 6 months, if their visa get renewed for another 12 months or 24 months, they can always renew their lease.
Yeah.
No problems there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we're very open to doing that as well.
Exactly.
I mean, if they've proven themselves to be a really great tenant, then there's no reason why you wouldn't do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Is there anything else there, Kayani, that I suppose we've missed, or we've kind of covered off on everything in terms of the changes to the application forms?
Yeah.
I know they covered it off in a particular section of the new Act, and they are quite detailed. Like I said, I think we've landed in a place that's much more comfortable to where we were originally going. I know initially they were saying that we couldn't even ask for any photo ID at all, which didn't really make too much sense. I mean, we're handing over the keys to a property to this person without asking for ID.
Without knowing who we're giving it to.
That's it, exactly. So at least this way we are still able to ask for 100 points of ID. We just need to be particular about the types of ID that are getting asked. We need to make sure that we're holding that information correctly, which we always have been anyway, and securely, and just making sure that where we're making I suppose decisions on the people that are moving into these properties, we're making sure that they're not discriminatory in any way. It shouldn't make a difference, with any of the information that they provide. So. That's great. Now I'll just check if there's any other questions that have come through. No, looks like no more questions. Looks like I've been asking enough questions, Kayani, obviously. I think that was about it.
All right.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Kayani, for taking us through that. Like I said, it's one of those areas that might not impact us all the time, particularly goods left behind. In most cases, people are pretty good with packing up and taking their own things with them. And the application forms, it was a bit of a I suppose a stress point for a few property managers leading into the reforms coming out. But fairly happy with where that's landed. But I think I think it's all about just making sure that we've got the correct process in place to be able to handle these things properly. As you can see from the goods left behind thing, it's more work that us as property managers have to do and be concerned about when things are left behind. It's no longer just going to the relevant government authority and asking them to assist. They are putting a lot more responsibility and onus on us, and then obviously the rental providers as part of that. But again, here at Real Estate, we're just making sure that we are doing everything as best we possibly can. It is a very steep learning curve for not only us but the whole industry. But we're just making sure that we are, at the forefront of that and making sure that we keep on top of all of those things as much as we possibly can. But again, thank you very much, Kayani, for doing all of that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Kayani at any time, and we'll definitely be happy to help. Thank you again.
Yeah.